The madness is here. BYU takes on VCU in Denver. And why does this game feel like it's a whole lot more than just one game? Simply put, it's all about legacy.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download Game Time today, create an account, use the promo code Locked On College to get $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on today's show, we preview BYU versus VCU, give you a prediction of what I expect this afternoon. We'll also talk about an X factor that has emerged for BYU in their lineup in this game. And then we'll finish off today's show talking a little about the early results from the Big 12 Pro Days in football. And at least one BYU Cougar, and Caleb Etienne, he has made himself some money, it appears. All right, so let's dive right in on today's show. BYU and VCU, we've been previewing it all week long. Looking forward to this matchup. And as I said in the open of today's show, this is more than just one game, it feels like, for the BYU basketball program. It's about legacy. And why do I bring that up when it's a 11 versus 6 matchup? Why does this involve legacy? Well, I have said it this week multiple times. The BYU outside of the Jimmer Fredette era, going back 32 years to 1993, BYU is 0-9 in first-round games outside of the Jimmer Fredette era from 2010 to 2011. It is an era that's marked by major frustrations for BYU fans. A number of you have been in my mentions all week long saying, Jake, you got some PTSD about BYU's early round exits in the NCAA tournament. You're darn straight I've got PTSD. I'm sick of watching BYU make it to the big dance and then spending exactly one game there in the big dance. Today's game, if Kevin Young is going to absolutely establish a new era, for lack of a better term, for BYU basketball, you got to win this game. You have to prove that you can advance in the NCAA tournament, because if you lose this one, it feels like every other one. It'd be 10 games at that point outside of the Jimmer Fredette era over a 3+ decade span of BYU being a team that gets in the dance and then is quickly out and headed home by Friday. That's a major disappointment if that's how it's going to play out today. But I've got a lot of faith that Kevin Young understands what he's up against here. One thing that I think is an absolute hallmark of the early run of Kevin Young's tenure is he is a guy who is absolutely going to adjust in game as best he possibly can to get BYU in the best circumstances possible to allow them to win the game. One of my chief criticisms of the Mark Pope era, for example, was the fact that he was so slow to adapt in game. It bugged me that he would sit on his hands and felt like, oh, the game plan's the game plan. We're gonna let it work itself out. One thing I have noticed with Kevin Young, if the game plan doesn't work, he'll, in quite literal terms, it feels like, wad it up, toss it in the trash, and come up with a new plan on the fly. That's something that BYU has to be willing to do, especially in this circumstance. It's one and done here, folks. Legacy truly is on the line for this BYU Cougars team. As I said, BYU wants to show that they are a different team, that they're a better team, that they are a bona fide national program that can contend with the best of them. You got to beat VCU. You've got to be able to get to the round of 32 where, if seeds hold, you'll face Wisconsin on Saturday. That's what's on the line here for the BYU Cougars in this game. Yes, there's a lot going into it. They're going to have to rebound well. They're going to have to be able to deal with the pressure defensively that VCU is going to bring. They're going to have to deal with a shot blocking tandem on the inside for VCU. I don't think VCU has seen the level of athleticism that BYU poses, and more importantly, the waves. 10, 11 guys, that's waves in a quite literal term that BYU can throw at opponents with their deep and very, very diverse lineup. There is any combination of 5 guys that Kevin Young can put on the court and should have some success against this VCU team, at least I hope. This is a BYU team, I think, that understands that now is what you got. It's everything about now. You have to go out and show what you're capable of. A lot of these guys were on last year's squad when it came up in a very disappointing outcome, losing to Duquesne. That was a game that had a record spread. It was 11.5, if I recall correctly, at tip-off. And there had never been a bigger spread in an NCAA tournament game involving a 6 seed and an 11 seed. We all saw what happened right before our very eyes as Duquesne punked BYU in that game. Kevin Young has said it multiple times this year. The change for this BYU team happened at halftime against UCF. Trevin Nell said that he essentially walked into the locker room and said, people think they can punk, P-U-N-K, punk BYU. From that point on, after that halftime speech, BYU became the ones that was doing the punking. We heard Kevin Young use that as one of the post-game, what do they call them? You know what I'm talking about from BYU TV. The cut, it's easy, the cut. And he said, we're the ones doing the punking now. That's what BYU has to do in this game. They've got to go out and punk VCU, send Ryan Odom over to UVA if that's where he's going to be the head coach of the Virginia Cavaliers. Say, thanks for coming, but we're on to the next. We're going to face off against Wisconsin or Montana. I'm looking forward to this. I think that there's a lot that BYU can accomplish simply with just this one game. None bigger than showing that, yes, this is a different BYU team. We're a team that doesn't need the National Player of the Year to advance. We can use what we have on this roster right now, and we can make it through to the round of 32. I think this is going to be a fun game. I really do. I think both of these teams, speaking of BYU and VCU, they bring a lot to the table. As I mentioned, the Rams, very good defensively. They're going to pressure BYU and try and force them into turnovers. BYU, conversely, they're going to try and go out and establish the prowess that has been deadly to so many opponents all season long with their elite offense. If this BYU team starts hitting threes, and I think the bigger point I should add is that BYU needs to make an early statement, a big three, a big dunk, whatever it takes. Avoid what has been a chronic condition of late of slow starts for this BYU Cougar team. If they go out and go scoreless for any longer than feels like maybe 2 to 3 minutes in this game, I'm going to be absolutely worried about the mindset of this team. They cannot afford to have long scoreless droughts in this game because that's going to play into the hands of the VCU Rams. I want to see consistent offense. I want to see BYU's defense, which has been, I think, underrated for much of this season, go out and show what they're capable of and hold this VCU team down. They're not elite offensively, speaking of VCU, but they're more than capable. But I think BYU, the athletes, the overall depth, the mindset that I think this team has right now, just kind of reading between the lines based on the comments they've made, it feels like this team understands that time is of the essence, and it's all about what have you done for me lately, and they want to show that they are a different BYU basketball program, and I, for one, applaud that and look forward to seeing if they can prove me right or if they're going to be just like the same over the last 3+ decades when they don't have the National Player of the Year. All right, coming up next, is there an X factor that has emerged? Could he play a major role in this game after having not played for the better part of 2 weeks, 2+ weeks here for the BYU Cougars? We're talking about Canon Catchings coming up next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, hey, where'd all that money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. That's the best part about this. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. You stop just managing your money and start building actual wealth. When you start using Monarch, you can realize how much you're actually spending on everything, quite literally, and cut it out of your budget. Now, obviously, you can budget smarter and save more. So take control of your finances with our friends at Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Once again, get started today at monarchmoney.com using the promo code Locked On College. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends, a longtime friend here on Game Time. Now, Game Time is here for you guys, giving you the chance to go and watch your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. We all know how that feeling is. Getting tickets should not be stressful to appreciate that. That's where Game Time comes at making it easier to get last-minute tickets at unbeatable prices. Game Time Picks curation makes it easy to find better value for tickets to sporting events, concerts, comedy, theater, and a whole lot more. The best part is you can go online right now and find a great offer. If you're out in the Denver area trying to scoop up some tickets to this NCAA tournament, you may check right now and see what's available to you guys right now. The best part is they have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So guess we're going to buy your tickets and download the Game Time app today. Create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, and of course, they're always guaranteed. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right, my good friend Mitch Harper over at the KSL Sports Zone yesterday got a chance to catch up with Canon Catchings in the open locker room. One of the key features of the NCAA tournament, by the way, they still have an open locker room. How many other sporting events in this day and age outside of the NFL offer that? Very few. I know that the NBA does, I think, still. Maybe, well, okay, I guess in college sports, it doesn't happen. But the bigger point is, he caught up with Canon Catchings and asked the $1 million question, Canon, you going to be able to play on Thursday? And he said, yeah, I am. And Mitch followed up because he kind of waffled on it, said, hey, I've been gearing up for this. He said, so you're playing? He said, yes. Now, could he be lying through his teeth? I guess possibly, but this is a kid, I think, Canon Catchings, who's pretty open about what he is hoping to accomplish. And could he, speaking of Canon Catchings and his shot-making ability, be a key differentiator, the proverbial X factor that could lift BYU in this game against VCU? I just talked about the fact that VCU is going to come in with a pressure defense that is going to try and force BYU into bad situations. A way to beat that is to have an elite shot maker who can take it from anywhere on the court, bury a three, and say, yeah, try pressuring that. Canon Catchings has showed that at points this season. I think based on the time he has sat out here, if he's not chomping at the bit to play in this type of an environment, I'd be floored. His best performance of the season by far was that Baylor game. Remember, there were 20 plus NBA executives, coaches, scouts, etc., at least in the Marriott Center that night. And what did Canon Catchings do? He went out and said, hey, you may be here to watch Jaeger Demon. You may be here to watch VJ Edgecombe. I'm going to insert my name into the conversation. My name's Canon Catchings. And he had an absolutely phenomenal performance. Remember, he was hitting from three, rising with authority, and just nailing shot after shot after shot. If BYU can get that type of Canon Catchings in this game today against VCU, good night, Irene. It is over. I will say it right now. That type of performance mixed up with everything else the BYU can offer with Richie Saunders, Jaeger Demon, the interior presence of guys like Keba Keita, Fuseni Traore. If Canon Catchings can come in, and he'll likely come off the bench at the very best, if he can offer that shot-making ability and be able to hit threes and force the defense to focus on him and open up the lane for his teammates and add that spacing element to this BYU offense, yeah, BYU is going to be riding high in this game, and his ability to impact it, I think, is understated at this point. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Let me know in the comments. Am I wrong about thinking that Canon Catchings could be that X factor that makes this a laugher for BYU? A lot of people out there, I'm with them. The spread has been hovering around 3 points. Our friends at FanDuel have had it in that realm all week long. A lot of the metrics in this game indicate it's closer to what you would expect from an 8-9 matchup versus a 6 versus 11. They're a Ken Palm top 30 team. Speaking of the VCU Rams, BYU's 24th. The net ratings are very similar. There's a lot in this game that screams it's a whole lot closer than 6 versus 11 would have you believe. Like I said, it's more of kind of a spread, and the overall metrics indicate you could see this in an 8-9 game where it's essentially supposed to be a 50-50 split. I think the key factor here is a guy like Canon Catchings. If he can do what he did against the likes of Baylor, and I'm not expecting him to come out and blitz VCU for 30 points. If he does, awesome. But if he even comes out and contributes maybe 10, 15 points, some nice rebounds, provides link-up play, and like I said, that shot-making ability that is kind of his calling card at this point in his career, that's good enough for BYU, and that would be a major, major impact. VCU is going to have to account for him. They're going to have to account for 10 other players on this BYU roster in their game plan. That's a lot to digest. It's a lot to like I said, digest, ingest, and understand, okay, each of these players, what are they trying to do? I mentioned it earlier. BYU can throw wave after wave of lineup at this VCU team, and I think that is going to be a major factor in this game because the ability to mix and match lineups with Kevin Young and his offensive mind, that's a tantalizing prospect. And you add a shot maker, the quality of a Canon Catchings to that equation now, that means they're all the more dangerous. So I'm looking forward to this. I want to see Cannon step up in a big moment. These are where the lights are absolutely brightest. I have seen many a guy make money in the NBA draft from their performances in March Madness. Now, it's not just about March Madness, and David Locke says this all the time. If an NBA team is going to draft a guy based off of 3 or 4 games in the month of March in the NCAA tournament, they're fools to think that those 4 games are replicable. You have to obviously gauge the full season's worth of work alongside that March Madness presence. But the one thing the March Madness offers is an elevated platform, an elevated stage to perform on for these athletes. And that's what Canon Catchings, I hope, understands about this. That's what I hope Jaeger Demon understands about this. In fact, I hope the entire roster for the BYU basketball program understands what this platform is all about. BYU has been talked about glowingly in many respects for the performance they put on down the stretch run of the season. 9 straight wins, a lot of them against Q1 variety, and BYU's 8 Q1 wins have seen them vault from what was bubble status a month ago to being, I said, firmly in the field, now a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. Go out and make the people who believed in you, the NCAA selection committee, guys like Joe Lunardi, make them look smart. And that's, I think, the whole goal here for this BYU squad is to go out there and put on a performance that shows, once again, this is a different BYU. This is a new look BYU. The Kevin Young era of BYU basketball, yeah, they do the punking. They ain't getting punked anymore. I look forward to this, and I really do think what Canon Catchings could offer could be a major, major impact to this game. I hope he delivers. I hope he steps up. This is a kid who has battled through a lot this year. Injury, obviously, downturns in play, being benched earlier this season after being a starter to start the year. He has battled back from adversity all season long, and now is the time, I hope, that he seizes the opportunity, if it's given to him, to go out there and add his name to an already strong BYU roster and remind people, hey, I'm also a factor in this. That will force teams, if you do advance like Wisconsin or a Montana or down the line, whoever you might play, hey, we got to watch out for this kid in addition to everything else BYU brings to the table. I love it. I love the fact that this versatility on this roster is going to, at least in my mind, benefit BYU. And having Canon Catchings only makes them deeper, only makes teams have to think twice about their overall game plan, adding another name to the scouting report. Everything about this is a net positive in my mind for the BYU basketball program and makes me feel only bolder and bolder about my decision, my pick that BYU does advance. I don't think it's going to be easy. I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park unless you get a monster performance from a guy like Canon Catchings. But if BYU handles their business, I see this as a game BYU wins. I'll say right now, 76-68. Like, it's not going to be super tight, but it's also not going to be completely comfortable either. And you don't want that. You want to see your team go out there and fight against adversity. You want to see this team battle through. And I, for one, I'm looking forward to it. I love March Madness. I love sitting down and watch all these games, and it's even better when BYU is a part of the mix. But more importantly, I want to see BYU be a bigger factor than just one game in March. That's the other thing about this. I want to see them put on a little bit of a run here. Hey, even if he advanced just the one round, I will take it because it shows progress from this BYU basketball team. All right, coming up next, former BYU Cougar made himself some money down in Frisco, Texas. And I'm not saying that he was doing anything illicit. He just put on a performance for the ages at what is an NFL Combine Light. That's the Big 12 Pro Days. Caleb Etienne cashed in. How did he do it? We're talking about that next. We wrap up this edition of Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over. Today's show Apologies. It's brought to you by our friends, like glitch there, by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. If you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back, my friends. This extra sunshine means some more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost of power through that and stay up with the sun. Whether you're staying up late to watch the NCAA tournament, squeezing in around a golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Obviously, like I mentioned, we're watching the NCAA tournament. Starts at like 10 a.m. here locally in Utah and goes until past 10 p.m. It's a full day, and you're watching a lot of it. The blood's pumping with the the madness that's going on. Take advantage of getting some extra energy with our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. You can head to 5hourenergy.com right now and find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered directly to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. And do it with our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Have a lot of fun passing along tidbits of what I'm hearing about BYU sports every single day. At least I endeavor every single day to have updates for you guys. And you get it in the form of a text message. It's not much more direct than that. And the best part is just $5 a month to be a part of the Insiders Group. And you get a 14-day free trial, 2 full weeks of a trial before you're charged anything. So join us today. Click the link in the show notes below and be a part of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, NCAA tournament obviously is stealing a ton of the headlines, but it doesn't mean we can ignore what's happening in Frisco, Texas. The Big 12 Pro Days are ongoing. It's a miniature combine of sorts. There's 14 former Cougars working out for NFL personnel down there at the Star. And the nice part is the linemen yesterday performed, I thought, pretty well. I had a chance to briefly interact via text message with Connor Pay, and Connor's message to me was he felt like he performed to the best of his abilities. He felt like his training had him on point. His overall numbers, coming from official numbers from the Big 12 Conference, are that he checked in with a 5.46 40-yard dash, 27.5-inch vertical jump, 8-foot 6-inch broad jump, 23 reps on the 225-pound bench press, 8.22 3-cone drill, and a 5.06 second shuttle time. Not bad numbers by any means. And Connor obviously is endeavoring to make himself into a priority free agent, maybe sneak into the end of day 3. And we're going to have Connor on. I think we'll probably see if we can get it recorded this weekend to recap what he's taken away from this Big 12 Pro Days. But I don't want to overshadow him, but I do need to take some time and talk about Caleb Etienne. Caleb Etienne was a guy that I thought absolutely deserved to go to the NFL Combine. The NFL Combine, when you're invited to it, means that multiple teams have what they call a draftable grade on you. And that means that if they give them the opportunity based on their draft board, they would take this player. Maybe they're a first rounder all the way to a 7th rounder, but they have a draftable grade on this player. I think some of the circumstances revolving around Caleb at one point pursuing that extra year of eligibility from the NCAA had some teams essentially cross him off their list. Well, he went to Big 12 Pro Days with something to prove, and he proved it. I got to give a major shout out to who he's been working with, because Caleb Etienne put together, I thought, a really, really fine performance. His numbers, officially a 5.01 second 40-yard dash, which is a top 10 time as compared to the other linemen across the board that went to the NFL Combine. Now, 40-yard dash is one thing. You obviously want to look at the 10-yard split. He was top 10 at the Big 12 Pro Days in his 10-yard split. That's an elite number, somewhere in the 1.7 range, I want to say. But the bigger point is he had a 30-inch vertical jump. And Caleb's already pushing 6'8", maybe 6'9". To jump another 30 inches in the air. Whew, wow, that's a big-time athlete. The biggest number, I thought that if I were an NFL talent evaluator who I think I'm writing down, hey, I'd take this kid, is Caleb Etienne notched a 9-foot 6-inch broad jump, jumped a full foot further than Connor Pay. It was the best mark, based on what I saw, of all the linemen at Big 12 Pro Days. That 9-foot 6-inch broad jump, that measures athleticism. That shows that Caleb is an athlete. Now, he also had 27 reps on the bench press, which is a pretty good number. I pulled that up. The NFL Combine, let me get this here as we're talking. The bench press used to be like this, you guys were putting up like 40 reps. It's no longer that. The highest at the NFL Combine was 33. And if you put 27 on the board for Caleb Etienne, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, tied for 6th best at the NFL Combine. He put together some absolutely elite numbers, and they're going to help him, I think, move himself in, I hope, to a draftable position. He likely is going to be a day 3 pick, probably looking more 5, 6, 7 round range, but he's already had a top 30 visit. I reported that on our Locked On Cougars Twitter feed, a top 30 visit with the Kansas City Chiefs. That's pretty elite to have a top 30 visit despite not being invited to the Combine, because top 30, there's only 30 visits the NFL teams can have in this draft process where they bring athletes for individual visits to their franchise. They flew Caleb out to Kansas City. He met with Andy Reid, met with Brett Veach, the brass of the Kansas City Chiefs. That shows that they have some interest in this kid, and the Chiefs obviously need help on the offensive line. Now, Kingsley Suamataia was drafted there last year in the 2nd round, and obviously had his chance early on in the season that ended up being a backup the rest of the way this year for the Chiefs. But Kingsley still got all the potential in the world to emerge as a starting caliber offensive lineman. And in fact, Kansas City needs him to do that. But could Caleb Etienne end up bookending him as a tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs? Maybe so. I think with this performance, Caleb, for example, made himself some really, really nice money. He did a really fine job. Other guys who performed yesterday, Blake Mangelson, he tied Caleb Etienne with a 5.01 second 40-yard dash, jumped 9 foot 3 inches, 22 bench reps, 29.5 vertical jump. Blake Mangelson showed the athleticism that he has as a hybrid defensive tackle / defensive end. John Nelson's numbers aren't completely up to date on this website, but 9 foot 10 inch broad jump for John Nelson, and that's a defensive tackle. That's pretty nice. Vertical jump of 33 inches. John Nelson showed some really nice things. I got a number that he ran a 4.94 second 40-yard dash as a defensive tackle. We're seeing some fine performances for former BYU Cougars at this Pro Day event. And I hope it continues on throughout the rest of this week and the weekend coming up. Now, I should note, to answer some of y'all who have the inevitable question, well, Jake, what's happening with not Isaiah Banya. Isaiah Banya already performed. What's happening with Darius Lassiter? Darius Lassiter is on the list to work out at this NFL Combine Light event at the Big 12 Pro Days. That, in my mind, should put to rest any speculation that he's coming back to BYU. He has been holding out hope that the NCAA would rule in his favor for another year of eligibility, but I think him ultimately going to the Big 12 Pro Days here to meet with NFL teams, to work out all that stuff, I think that he understands the writing is on the wall without it being official, that the NCAA is going to deny his petition and obviously have to turn pro. It's unfortunate because if Darius had been able to come back, that would have been an awesome addition, another, I guess, re-addition to BYU's wide receiving core. But I hope he goes out and kills it. Hope he goes out and kills it in this workout setting, much like what we saw from Caleb Etienne. Caleb Etienne is going to be a team that is going to be a guy that NFL teams are like, hey, we didn't invite him to the Combine. We need to learn more about him. And I hope that multiple guys do this. I hope that John Nelson earned himself some extra eyeballs. I hope that Blake Mangelson did that. I hope Isaiah Banya. I hope every one of these guys got some extra looks from NFL personnel that could help them, in many respects, make a training camp roster, improve themselves on the field. Or in the case of Caleb Etienne, move yourself into draftable position where a team is taking you with the expectation that you will be on that roster that season. It's a big opportunity. It's a big platform, like you've already talked about with the NCAA tournament. It's obviously a chance for these guys. This is a job interview. It's a weird job interview because you're working out and you're obviously training your body for months on end for these specific drills, but it's the only way that you can make your mark with these NFL teams in many respects. And for guys that don't go to the Combine, you got to kill it at Pro Day. And so far, guys like Caleb Etienne are doing just that for the BYU Cougars, and I applaud them for their efforts. We'll have more updates as the week progresses, obviously, and big ups once again to Caleb Etienne and the rest of the linemen for BYU. Tyler Batty was there, but only did position-specific drills. He stood on his numbers he put on at the NFL Combine, which were pretty darn good in his own right. All right, so there you go. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On Cougars. Enjoy the game. We'll do a postcast immediately after the game goes final, and if BYU advances, I've already got plans, and if Wisconsin advances, Ryan Herrings, who hosts Locked On Badgers, we are scheduled to do a crossover tonight ahead of the game on Saturday. That'll be tomorrow's podcast. So fingers crossed it all works out, but we'll see how it all goes for the BYU Cougars today out there in the big dance. But as always, thank you truthfully for all the support. I do think you guys mean the world. Subscribing, rating, reviewing, sharing with your family and friends, commenting. Let me know what you like, good, bad, or indifferent. I appreciate it all. And thanks as always for being a member and not a member of the Insider Group if you want. But more importantly, thank you for being with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.